Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
All right, you guys set up and ready?
Audio Jungle.
3, 2, 1, go!
Audio Jungle.
Audio's on, and look, we're live. Hello. Hello, everyone out there in...
Hello.
I say TV land. It's Twitch land. This is basically TV now. Welcome to TV. Welcome to our Twitch stream. This is Creative Conversations. My name is Megan. I am the manager down at the Wacom Experience Center, which this is not. This is my basement, so sorry. It's okay, though. It's pretty exciting. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We're super stoked to have everyone tuned in. I am more than beyond excited to have our special guest with us today, Mr. David Silverman. Yay. Yay!
Hello, everybody.
We need that round of applause button, right?
It's nice to see you all. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello.
Everywhere.
I have no idea if I'm looking at windows. I have no idea.
I know, everywhere around. For those of you guys that maybe aren't familiar with David, he's done so many wonderful things, has been a huge
Have I?
part. You have. I mean, at least 3. It's a family of 5, so you've done at least 5 great things that I can count on one hand. But his work on The Simpsons is probably what you're most well known for. You have done a ton of other stuff outside of The Simpsons, which we can talk about.
Sure, we'll talk about it.
Thank you again for joining. Let's actually, let's get started. And again, for everyone that's watching, if you guys have questions that you want to throw in the chat, please drop them in the chat. We're going to do our best.
Please. I do apologize. I was just answering some last-minute texting, people saying this and that. I said, very nice. I'm doing a thing now.
Done.
I'm in a show.
I know. You're on live. It only took us a couple times to remember to silence our cell phones, so it's
Yeah.
okay. Live and learn. We're all here for personal growth. This is the time that we have to do it.
This, by the way, is my cell phone start image, reminding us where we are.
Rotary phone. Rotary phone for the kids.
Candlestick even, back to the 30s. Anyhow,
So,
all right.
to get us started, I won't pull out the slide whistle just yet. It's still a little early.
Very good.
But why don't you tell us kind of how you got your start? How did,
Okay.
back in the day?
Back in the day, well, I started drawing when I was about 4, and I couldn't think of a good reason to stop, so I kept it up. I kept going, and I was inspired by everything cartoony. I was actually, there used to be a Woody Woodpecker show that Walter Lantz would host, and he'd say, "Hi, boys and girls," and he'd show films about making animated cartoons. I mean, literally filming his staff drawing the Woody Woodpecker characters, and it was at a very early age, you can make a living doing this. Very interesting. So
Yeah.
probably around 5, I thought about animation, and it was really quite something. Between that and even The Wonderful World of Disney, which was on, there was a lot of information to stimulate young kids like myself to want to be cartoonists. So I was inspired by Warner Brothers cartoons, of course. And then there was a show from a former Warner Brothers director, Bob Clampett, called Beanie and Cecil, and that also inspired. For those of you who don't know what that is, you can maybe find a few things online. More about that later, actually. And also the Rocky and Bullwinkle show.
Huge.
Very inspired. And I could tell that was different. And even the early days of Hanna-Barbera, and I could tell, obviously these guys don't have as much time or dough to do the films, but they're still funny. So I didn't discriminate, against that. I just like anything that was entertaining and done well. I could see that was, so it was all stimulating. And then there was, of course, Mad Magazine, and all the artists in Mad Magazine, from Mort Drucker to Sergio Aragonés to just the usual gang of idiots. And then, of course, there was a comics, and then there's Peanuts and the great Walt Kelly and Pogo. It was very inspiring. So all this stuff was being poured into my head, and I just wanted to learn how to draw. So I did my best. Still learning, not that good enough, but still learning. And I I could show you some images. Should I show you some images?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's just
Also,
go right ahead.
you may have noticed, by the way, I may have noticed that there are some tubas in the house.
Tubas and possibly a sousaphone.
Well, yes, and the sousaphones, which are tubas.
Which are
Anyhow,
tubas, yes.
Yes.
But not sousas or not.
No, the other way around.
Yeah.
So, but the point of it is, well, you will see, music has played a vital role in all of this, which is not uncommon. There is a connection between music and animation, music and artists, and blah, blah, blah. Not the least being, with many of you, I'm sure, must be familiar with Ward Kimball, one of the great Disney animators, one of the 9 old men of Disney. Perhaps two of his most famous sequences that he did was the Three Caballeros song.
So good.
And also the Mad Tea Party in Alice in Wonderland. My goodness. And all that great animation is his. And I think also Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Right,
Cheshire
right.
Cat. I think Lucifer in Cinderella. Anyhow, also, he was a very good friend of Walt Kelly, when Walt Kelly, Disney animator, worked there. But he was also a very good trombonist, very good musician. And they formed a band called the Firehouse 5+2, which actually they could have given up their jobs at Disney and been like full-time musicians. And Frank Thomas played piano, which put him in very good stead to animate Captain Hook playing the piano.
Oh, yeah.
On the left hand. And he knew from his own experience how to do that. Anyhow, I bring this all up. Where is he going with this? I don't know. Well, I'll tell you where I'm going with this.
Okay.
So this, you can see this, right?
Yep.
With screens? Yes. So this drawing here, see that?
So good. Oh, full band. So good.
So this drawing actually started because I said, I got to learn how to draw violins. And I didn't know how to draw violins. And I started, I'm going to learn how to draw all the instruments of the orchestra. So I did. And I did this. So I was 17 when I did this.
Oh, wow.
And it was inspired by a guy named Jared Hoffman, who'd also done orchestra. But you see, this led to, now this is a rough sketch. I showed it to people at the National Symphony Orchestra of Washington, D.C. And I had this proposal to do like the full orchestra. So this is like based on that, expanding the string section and using a lot of the jokes that I had developed in this. And this then led to 2 years later, about 2.5 years later, actually realizing this. So this
Awesome.
I started around the time I was around 18, just started getting, and I would go to rehearsals and so forth, and it's actual caricatures of everybody in the orchestra. I don't know how I did it.
I was gonna say, now how long did you
This was on
attend their rehearsals? Like to
which is great. They gave me carte blanche to go to all the rehearsals, and I learned a lot about music at the time. I had a lot of great musicians and had a wonderful time. This guy, Miran Kojan, he was a concert master. He's actually in Los Angeles now as a sessions player. Anyhow, this is, I threw myself in the bell of the tube up here. I kind of look like that at that age. And the tuba player actually, David Brugonier, gave me some good lessons. Anyhow, let me go back to. So I just want to say, I was able to do this because I started going to the University of Maryland. They had a Department of Architecture. I was studying a little architecture as well, but I had no intention of doing that. I had full intention of doing what I did was go to UCLA, which I transferred 2 years later. But at the School of Architecture, they had these giant drafting tables, and this was obviously before there was really the use of computers, because it's 1975. So this was drawn as a 6 by 4 foot drawing with ink on vellum, and I had this giant table that I could work off of. I still don't know how I did
It's
without
insane.
spilling.
There was a comment that is too much work, and
Oh yes, yes.
It's
Any
insane.
comments?
Also, tiny dog. Was there a dog in the orchestra?
That was this is Slava, which is Rostropovich. That was his nickname, was Slava. Mr. Slav Rostropovich, who was a music
So good.
director and conductor and a cellist, which is why he has a cello bow for a baton. And that's his dog, whose name eludes me, but anyhow.
Pup.
So,
Pup. So good.
yes, so that's
So-
what that's all about.
So when you started college, you said you went into architecture. Were there
Not really. I mean, I was.
were there
I-
animation programs though? Like, was that something that you could find, or was it very?
Yes, there were.
Niche.
There,
Okay.
At that time, these were the earlier ones. There was UCLA, there was CalArts, and there was the USC.
Okay.
And so, and I probably Sheridan was around, but you know, I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in the DC area, Maryland, and went to University of Maryland for 2 years. Transferred to UCLA, got into the film department there. Well, I went there earlier, and I looked at UCLA, I looked at CalArts, and I looked at USC. And the reason why I went to UCLA was actually twofold. First of all, it was a lot cheaper. And, second of all, University of Maryland was a big campus, like UCLA, 35,000 students, big grounds, and a lot to do. And I liked that. I wanted more variety. I mean, it would have been great to go to CalArts, and of course, a lot of great talent went and came out of CalArts and continues to. It's a brilliant school. However, I wanted a more different environment. I wanted to do my animation stuff, but I wanted to play in the band, and I wanted to take these classes in the science department. And so forth.
Yeah.
So, and also, I didn't decide to move from the East Coast to Southern California to be further away from the beach. So that was
True.
another factor.
Very true. Very true. Fun.
So that's what made my decision to UCLA, and so
Cool.
and that's what happened. So I went to UCLA, and here let's continue. I could
Yeah,
show
that's
you
a great fun historical fact for my family history, which honestly no one probably cares about, but I'll share it anyways because this is what Twitch is for. My grandma went to UCLA when it was just the buildings on top of the hill.
Right.
Very cool.
Right.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting up there. That actually there was a ravine that's they filled in. It's landfill up in that area. So look at those old photographs, friend.
Oh yeah, gotta find some of those.
There's a crater there. What's going on?
It's interesting.
So I was about to show you. This was very interesting because this led the Musical Association. So you see, they printed that as a poster. Let me go back to that real quickly. This was a poster for the National Symphony Radiothon.
Okay.
In conjunction with the music station, and I actually got paid for that. I mean, not a ton of money, but you know, paid nonetheless.
Yeah.
But the music critic of the was Martin Bernheimer of the Los Angeles Times, and he wanted to find an artist. And I did these. It's called "It Only Hurts When You Think." These are just sort of like an occasional thing, and with jokes. And so he wanted somebody to do funny drawings for it. So I was a natural choice, and I did funny drawings for it. Let's see. Is there another? Yeah, there's some close-ups.
So good. Those are great.
Yeah. So, and that was actually from a friend of mine who went to UCLA. It was Charles Solomon, who you may have heard of.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was already a critic, a ringer critic for the dance critic and the music critic. And so Martin Bernheimer asked him, "Do you know anybody?" I showed him that poster. He immediately started, hiring. And the other thing, then I also joined the marching band, and I became the band cartoonist because
So good. Naturally.
And you can see my influence from Asterix, which is one of my favorite things. So you can, if anybody's seen that. Wait, there we go. We'll get to that later. But this led to a company called Alfred Publishing. They saw my drawings in the LA Times, and they hired me to do some publicity artwork. And also, I became their illustrator for this new series of books that they had, which are still in publication apparently. It's called Alfred's Basic Piano Library.
How cool.
So they're still printing. And these are, all the silly drawings that I was able to do. I mean, I don't know how they let me get away with these weird drawings, but some of them are pretty weird.
What year was this?
This was between 1980.
Okay.
Well, I think Martin Bernheimer that started like 79.
Okay,
And then still, Alfred Publishing was around 80, 81, and then I did that, I think, all the way up to about 86. I think it overlapped a little into the Simpsons days.
Cool. There's something very, very 70s about some of your earlier drawings, and I don't quite know how to phrase it, but if you look back at some of the artworks and editorial cartoons and images, and even images and drawings that go in some tutorial books. I have some old art books and drawing books from the 70s. There's this very, I don't know how to describe it, style
Right.
that I think is super silly. So oftentimes when we host our in-person events and workshops with artists, we have so many young artists. And Portland, actually outside of LA, has a huge animation community, which is amazing. But one thing that we always talk about is how to get your artwork noticed, and like how do you get your foot in the door. Now oftentimes we hear networking, but for you, for some of those early jobs, how did you, was it word of mouth, or how do you felt like you got some of those
it's very
jobs?
Interesting. It's kind of word of mouth. Because other jobs I had some other jobs as well. But the music books, which was pretty useful for my early career, was because of the LA Times. They saw my work in the LA Times and how they got in touch with me. And then he had a friend, and he got in touch with me. I had some other work for other people. So yeah, it was kind of word of mouth.
Yeah.
I did some work on so funny because a good friend of mine is Kirk Thatcher, who's a sculptor and director of Muppets, and Dinosaur,
That's right.
Star Trek, the one with the whales, number 4. Anyhow, the punk who gets pinched. He's also a sculptor and an effects designer. But I didn't work with him on this, but through another friend, somehow I ended up doing publicity drawings for Gremlins when it became a huge hit, sort of surprise hit. They wanted some more publicity drawings, and I was doing I don't think they used my drawings per se, but I think they used it as kind of like somebody else would clean them up or something like that. So I met Joe Dante. It was really great, lovely guy.
Yeah.
But again, through another friend, and then through that same friend, I worked at Hanna-Barbera. Well, Ruby Spears, which is part of Hanna-Barbera. First they were rivals, and Hanna-Barbera they merged back with Hanna-Barbera. And I worked on such shows as Turbo Teen and The Adventures of Mr. T.
Ooh. Had a great van. He had a good van.
Yeah, he was done unironically, so it wasn't terribly funny. They were not very good. Which, by the way, I didn't realize that at the same time that I was working there, probably Sam Simon was working as a animation writer before he got involved in Cheers and things like that. So he had experience working in there, and he just really hated the way, I think that really helped inspire him when he became part, in the beginning days of The Simpsons, because he realized, here's all the things they wouldn't let us do at Ruby Spears and Hanna-Barbera that I wanted to do in the animation. Here are all the jokes I want to do and the type of approach, because why are you regulating animation to not be funny?
Yeah. So, when did let's talk about first, your first, animations and work and stuff that you did on the Tracy Ullman show, because that obviously led into The Simpsons.
Oh, yes.
How was that? Also, if you haven't watched the Tracy Ullman show, she's hilarious.
Oh, totally hilarious. I was working on a film called One Crazy Summer. Everybody remember that film? It was a Savage Steve Holland film, and John Cusack, and he was I think his name was Hoops McCann or something like that, but he was a cartoonist on the side. So there's 10 minutes of animation in it. And Bill Kopp, who I'd met we met, actually, Bill Kopp and I met through a film festival, student film festival that we were both winners in different years, but we became good friends in like 84. And in 85 he was doing this, like around August of 85 I got involved in this One Crazy Summer. It was about 10 minutes of animation. Also there was Tim Bjorklund and Wes Archer, also people that Bill knew from CalArts. So we did that, and then Wes had worked for Klasky Chupo when it was basically about as big as this, you know, like 3 rooms, and they mostly did motion graphics. They didn't do a lot of character animation, but occasionally they would have a commercial that required character animation. Wes did that. They got the Tracy Ullman Show contract to animate Matt Groening's material, which everybody assumed when, you know, Matt came on would probably be Life in Hell. We had no idea. We assumed it would be animated Life in Hell. And that started in March of 1987. I had planned actually to take the year off, if you will. I mean, I had enough saved up to live for a year to work on my own stuff, my own style. Because my friend Gary Baseman, who you probably know of, Gary Baseman, great illustrator, he literally did that. He was working, worked in advertising, and he was like an art director for some firm. But he saved off enough to, he literally spent a year working on his own style. He'd wake up in the morning, 9 to 5 drawing, to see where it's, and then after a year he felt, I have my style, and be a very successful illustrator.
Yeah.
And I was kind of struggling at that point. I thought maybe I should do that. He encouraged me. So that was plan A. And then I got this call from Wes and Bill, do you want to work on the Tracy Ullman Show and work with Matt Groening? So, I love Matt Groening's work.
Yeah.
That sounds like some fun for a couple of weeks. And so that's what happened. And we went in. Actually, I thought I was going to be only involved at the beginning because originally they could only afford 2 animators.
Right.
Now they're going to afford 3, but they can only afford 2. But then they were really busy the first week, and they needed me to come at least for help out for 2 weeks. And Gabor Chupo saw my stuff, and he thought, you know, your stuff's great. You know, they're actually paying me extra because for every additional second I'm paid an extra whatever. So it was more than enough to cover for a 3rd animator. So and that's how it happened. And for the first part of the Tracy Ullman Show, we worked from March till September of 87. 20 Matt Groening pieces. Also 8 M.K. Brown, Dr. Janice Ungadatu, which didn't go over too well. But so we did 28 shorts altogether, and 20 of them were Simpsons. And yeah, so we worked for over, which is the longest gig I had, really.
Right, yeah.
And then we came back at the end of the year, around the last week of the year, and then we worked until the writer's strike in '88.
Oh, okay.
And in March, and then something else happened in 1988. You may remember, Who Framed Roger Rabbit came out.
Yep. Was that
And
88? Yeah, it was.
That was summer of '88. And
Yeah.
there had been talk about, you know, Matt had talked about like a series or so forth. Apparently, Jim Brooks later told me I had helped lay the seeds of it at the first Tracy Ullman Show party where I drunkenly introduced myself. He said I was right.
Perfect. Perfect.
But I said something inspiring to him. He said there's something that you said, something along the lines that it'd be great for this to be a series, and it was nice to do adult animation and prime time for a change. And I think that sort of like kind of entered his brain. The other thing that were happening when they were doing the Tracy Ullman Show, they would show like about 5 or 6 Simpson shorts together.
Yep.
Because Tracy Ullman Show is so difficult to do. Most sitcoms they can film like in an hour, you know, an hour and 10 minutes or something.
Yeah.
Tracy Ullman Show is usually 2.5 hours because there was makeup changes.
Right.
And so
Sets and.
yeah, so you usually have a warm-up guy, and he was running out of material. So they would started to show a bunch of Simpson shorts, and apparently they said they could get some of the as good a laughs as anything else of the night, and that sort of made them think, well, maybe there's something to this as a series.
Yeah. What else? So for syndicate, well, yeah, for primetime like TV, 1980. I'm trying to think of what other cartoons were out that were even in the same vein as The Simpsons. Nothing. Yeah. I mean, there's like Saturday morning cartoons. There's those like those classics.
Yeah. But I mean, the last successful primetime show was really the Flintstones.
Yeah.
I think the Jetsons, the Jetsons only was one season, and I think that was on a prime time.
I think I know, outside of also knowing The Simpsons, specifically seasons 1 through 9, by heart, the Jetsons. I used to watch that every morning, religiously.
I mean, there are a lot of iterations afterwards.
Right.
But the point of it is, as far as primetime animation, there was, I think, the biggest ones were the Bullwinkle Show, Flintstones, Jetsons briefly.
Yeah.
That's about it. I mean, there was a show called Wait Till Your Father Comes Home, but I think that was on in the afternoon. It wasn't particularly good, but
That doesn't sound very interesting. So what was it?
They're trying to be a soft version of All in the Family.
Right. Yeah. So from that transition from those animated shorts on the Tracy Ullman show to the primetime show, what was that like? Like, I'm imagining the amount of work obviously got a lot bigger. Also, The Simpsons styles change, which I'm very curious about how you guys, because that's one of the things you're credited with, is kind of creating that style.
I mean, people say that like it never happened before.
I know.
I mean, look at the Mickey Mouse style change.
Right.
Style change.
Right.
Look at any comic strip, the Peanuts change.
Right.
Look at any sitcom with the actors.
Growth.
They change styles.
We all grow.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, if you look at the first episode of Seinfeld, you say the characters are off model because they don't seem like the same characters.
True. Super true.
So everything changes, but people are like, "Oh, why did it look the same?" Because it's called evolution.
Right.
You're drawing the characters a certain way, and you change them.
Right.
Which is why, when you're doing a feature, you basically only have one shot at it. This is the way the characters are going to look.
That's it.
And no room for change. It was when we were doing the Tracy Ullman show, we didn't have a model sheet. I mean, Matt says, "Look, I'm a writer who draws fun, and I want you guys to, because we're a little like, how are you doing, Bart, this week? How are you drawing home this week?" And that was sort of how we went about it. But by the end of it, we had come up with we codified it pretty much.
Yeah.
And then, in the beginning of '89, Wes actually, he wrote, after we worked it out, he really finalized the model sheets while I was working on the main title sequence. So that's how we sort of split it up, our chores at the beginning. And also we found that Wes and I were essentially directing the shorts. We were co-directing the shorts. Matt would come in and we basically took care of everything. We broke it down storyboards, we divided like who's going to animate what, and we animated it. And we timed out all our animation, and that was it. That's how we did it. So we were learning how to direct, even though we didn't, because we always called we always thought our stuff as just, animating it. We always thought that, we didn't realize there was a difference between a layout artist and an animator, because we were doing all our layouts and all our animation together. So we were just doing it, and we were boarding it as well.
Super cool.
So we were doing all the jobs.
Doing all stuff from here to here. We're gonna just do it all.
We did all the jobs. There was not a board. There were no board artists, or no layout artists, and there were no cleanup artists. It was me and Wes. Oh, I'm sorry. The last iteration after the strike, and they hired a guy to be a cleanup artist to take care of it. So we took some of the pressure off. It didn't matter. We still filled it up. We worked about 80 hours a week, even though they only paid us 40. We didn't care. We thought it was
crazy.
Worthwhile for a portfolio, if nothing else. So that's advice I give to everybody. Whatever you're doing, just throw your all into it, because you never know.
It's true. Yeah.
And by the way, I found that out to be a real problem. We did 48 shorts. We tried to do a 49th, but I couldn't do it. But Matt wanted to try it out, and I would help somebody else who was going to animate it. It just didn't work out, just because on that budget and that timeline, if they're not like Wes and I, it just didn't happen. The other interesting thing is that Millhouse was invented for a Butterfinger commercial. We did 2 Butterfinger commercials before we did the series in November of 1988, and that's where Millhouse came from. He was actually designed in a unpicked up NBC show that Matt had designed that was going to be done at a company called Colossal Pictures up in San Francisco. And they didn't pick it up. It was kind of like Recess in a way.
Yeah.
And he had like designed all these characters, and one of the characters he designed was this very funny looking character, Millhouse. So
Too good.
we liked that, and that's where he came from. And Pamela Hayden did it for the commercial and landed a gig for 30 years.
Well, there you go.
And so, and that's what happened. And then we became directors, and the Christmas episode became sort of the premiere episode.
The Simpsons roasting on an
The
open
Christmas
fire.
special was
Yeah.
actually episode number 8.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why you don't see Santa's Little Helpers in all those 7 shows beforehand.
That's right.
Nor
'cause
do you
it
see
doesn't-
Patty and Selma, because they were introduced in that show.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. That's
Yeah,
right.
So, and so I directed 5 episodes that year, and so did Wes, and it was a lot of work. It was an insane amount of work.
I believe
Second-
it. I believe
Second
it.
season, we also directed 5 episodes. Myself, Wes Archer, and Rich Moore, and we subdivided the Halloween episode, where we each took a segment. I did the Raven sequence.
Yep.
Rich did the Ken Koda sequence. I did the Amityville horror sequence.
Excellent. That Kane and Kodos sequence, I still...
Oh,
It's a two-party system. You have to vote for one of them.
Oh no, that's later.
That's
I'm talking about
later.
the one-
That's
yeah,
later.
I'm talking about the very first one.
Ha! I haven't been to
Kane Kodos-
trivia in a while. We're getting rusty.
Ken and Kodos have been in every Halloween episode.
That is true. Yep.
They always make an appearance as part of the thing.
So,
So
for...
any questions out? Any questions out in the?
Let's see. I know there's just a lot of chatter. A comment that some of the movies were older than our audience, but that's okay,
That's where it goes.
That's
fellas.
where it goes. So,
Here, while you're doing that, I'm going to show you some. This is like, let's see.
yeah, what do you got?
These are sketchbooks.
These are great.
These are sketchbooks around. This is around 1986, I guess.
Super cool.
And I would go to a dance movement class at UCLA called Movement for the Actor. I took it, and this great guy Tom Orth taught. He would let me come in and do sketches, and it just sort of helped me loosen up. But also see how it just got me better at like drawing not only the body but just sort of drawing the gesture of the body.
Right.
I tried my hand at caricature. I thought maybe I'd do that for a little while. But I'm not great. I'm not bad. This was I think for an ad of some sort. I'm not really sure what this was for. I think I got paid, but I don't know if they did it.
You're getting good comments on your movement sketches, which are true.
Uh-oh.
Movement sketches are great. I mean, it's that reminder to like fast and loose, keep it quick, keep it fluid, keep moving, don't get caught up
I
in
found this
drawing,
drawing, which is interesting because it sort of reminds me of Homer's Land of Chocolate Pose. So I guess I was, working on. Oh, and then I should show this. This we talked about. There was a iteration of the Late Show on the Fox network. This is before The Simpsons. This is,
Oh.
I think this was 1986. So we did these shorts called Late Show Tunes.
Oh, yes.
Bill Kopp and I did these, and this is something I animated. It's called Pupples, the Magic Puppy. Let's watch.
Let's watch.
And that's showbiz.
I still
Made in Hollywood, USA.
I still love his little feet. It's these little like frantic puppo feet that are super great.
We did a bunch of those fun shorts.
They're- How
does
long?
anyone want to see?
Ooh,
how do
how-
you like that?
It was
Anyone see
it was
this
good.
one?
Actually, there was a question. Do you have a bit or like a joke or a sketch that you did or you animated that you still think is funny? Like I would
Oh.
hope you think everything is still funny, but do you have a favorite?
Oh, a lot of stuff I think is funny. Here's something. I just found this. This is jumping ahead. It doesn't matter.
It's we're live.
Jumping ahead. This is from Homie the Clown, which was one of my favorite episodes to direct. I just thought this is a really hilarious episode. And it was also funny because a lot of the writers were worried that the episode wasn't particularly funny, and I thought it was really great. No, I mean, but afterwards, after I got through with it, they thought it was funny. They said it didn't. When they had the read through, it didn't read funny or something like that. When I read the script, I just imagined it to be hilarious. But so here is some fun animation. Krusty, who's always fun to animate. Also, just really great writing. Great John Schwartzwalder writing. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. And boom.
George Carlin on 3.
Yeah? Lawsuit? Oh, come on. My 7 words you can't say on TV bit was entirely different from your 7 words you can't say on TV bit. So I'm a thief, am I? Well, excuse me! Give him 10 grand.
Steve Martin on 4.
10 grand.
Well, there you go. That's still pretty funny.
Does it happen often when you guys are doing the read-throughs that some jokes don't maybe hit as funny as they should until people see like a rough animation or the storyboard?
I mean,
you just...
I think sometimes I would even say, not that they would not want to, I would sometimes chime up after a table read. I'll say, I think this may not hit big in the story room.
Yeah.
But I think visually it could be very funny. So I'd recommend trying it before we axe it. Okay, let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yes, there's definitely things that are visual jokes. And there are times that at the table read, there might be a whole series of, like in this montage, instead of reading through everything, they'll skip over that because they know, unless they think it's going to read funny when they describe it, it's like
right.
Jump ahead to the dialogue.
Right, because I feel like sometimes there's so many either quick back and forths, or like you said, like a montage of moments and scenes that you're like, how do you? I'm just gonna talk through this, and it maybe won't strike the funny bone. We do have another question. Which character or characters are your favorites to animate?
Well, I guess I gotta say Homer and Krusty. I seem to have the most fun with that, and part of it is twofold. It's the material that's written for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's always great, Homer being the main character, and absolutely got to hand it to Dan Castellaneta. It is the reading for both those voices. He always gives me something to work with, and that's coming to that. One of my favorite. Well, maybe I can pull it up. I might have it somewhere on. But Homer living in a world of make-believe was one of my favorite things. You're living in a world of make-believe. And I remember George Meyer, who wrote the episode. It's one of the great writers we've had, George Meyer. He said when he wrote it, he wasn't sure how it was going to, because he writes it. You're my wife, I love you very much, but you're living in a world of make-believe, of flowers and bells and leprechauns, magic frogs and little hats. I mean, you write it and you think that it's going to be funny. Dan's reading of it is brilliant. It is so funny.
Right.
And it adds the other dimension. And then I get inspired from the animation, and apparently that union of the writing and the performance and the animation inspired them to do other ones, like, ooh, look at me, I'm making people happy. I'm a magical man, you're happy lad. And then other things like that, like the sugar. So I animated those scenes. One of my other favorite things to animate was the whole diatribe about sugar. I'll never be the darling of the so-called city fathers. That whole thing. Again, it just seemed like a great time to have fun from the animation.
Yeah.
And then same with Krusty, come on, you stupid horse! I got my last $10 on you. Oh, don't look at me. Just inspired. Because you can go. Because it's just those quick things where you can go from like that desperation to, and that's fun to animate.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, Dan's voice when acting those characters, there's that like Homer gets pretty sarcastic and like giddy little girl voice, and super chummy, and then Krusty's always crass and
He's
kind of
always
borderline, like, you're like, oh god, he can't say this on television or whatever. So that's kind of the opposite
Well, it's also great
ends.
about him. He's just sort of like, he'll say these things and then go like, I gotta seal that bit. So he's very much, he goes from the extremes. And
Yeah.
I think it's the other thing about Homer. And John Schwartzwelder always would say that to young writers about, Homer's a dog, and like a dog, he'll be like, and then,
Yeah.
a dog doesn't take time to be angry to be happy. He just
It's
goes
just-
from one to the other.
It just goes.
Yeah. And also, he's fiercely loyal. That's the other thing too. That when he
True.
puts it down, he's fiercely loyal to the family.
Very
He's
true.
defended to the death. So that's what Homer is. So here's a piece of animation I'm sure you've seen, and maybe some of you have seen it as an animatic, but I will share it regardless. It's a little hard to see, but maybe you'll be able to see it. Here we go.
They're dogs, and they're playing poker.
Speaking of dogs, this was a lot of fun to do because I was having fun experimenting with the extremes of going back like this and just popping to the next expression, like from here. So this is just like literally no in-betweens. So he antics down, and you just pop to that expression.
Yeah.
And then you settle back from it. So having fun with those extremes, and having fun with these extremes. I always like the one eye looking at the audience. It's like a parrot.
Right, the one eye is great. Also, too, for reference, he's pointing at the painting of the dogs sitting around the
Yes, of
table
course,
playing
yeah.
poker.
The same thing here, like on the laugh. When you do a laugh, the best thing to do is you antic up and you pop down to get the percussiveness of the laugh.
That's a good. Okay, here's actually a great question that might kind of segue off of what you just said. What are some key elements to making a character iconic or timeless? What are those key elements?
Gee, I don't know.
Oh, big question.
He just tries stuff. I mean, I don't know.
So flip side of that, have there been things, features? Although I feel like across the board, The Simpsons has always been very true.
Well, here's something that's interesting.
Things that maybe didn't stick that you guys tried that were like, oh, maybe we'll try it, and then you end up phasing it back out, or stuff that just.
Sometimes, I mean, I always thought Baron von Kisselot was going to be a bigger character, but he only had one appearance. But here's something, right? This became iconic. Do you remember that drawing I showed earlier that I said it's sort of reminiscent of the skip?
Yep.
Well, there you go. It's something about the way I made the legs and something like that. And I found these recently. I hadn't seen these roughs because most of these drawings vanish because they go in with the layouts and we never see them when they come back. But I fortunately had these roughs. But I don't know. I mean, again, all I can tell you is this: when I do something that becomes apparently iconic, which is awesome,
Yeah.
I just all I know is that makes me laugh a lot. And there's sometimes I remember when I was doing the skip cycle, it just made me laugh. It just sort of charmed me, and that's all I have. That's all I have to work with. So I would go from that direction. I get very kind of excited at like really cool vocal performances, and I can't help but act it out. Go like so. I'll go like this, like Homer. And then I want to try to animate that.
Right.
That's
You're like, hold
silly,
on, no, your elbow was a little more hinky. Like, how do you get this?
And try to push these things, and then in the face, you gotta get, you gotta make faces. I mean, I have a slightly rubber face. Maybe that helps. But
Could be helpful. Could be good
I don't
helpful.
know. Does that answer anything?
That's a great. Yeah, that's everyone loves Homer. It's true. He's a very endearing character, and as goofy and silly as he is,
Well,
he's
this is stuff that I
beloved.
think, of course, you probably all know, and this was just a lot of fun to do. I will share this as well. This is interesting too, because this is the first time this is when I first got a computer, which is in 1995. also got my email address. Way back in 1995.
Same email since 1995?
Yep.
Good for you.
Goo goo gajoob.
What's great about this is I was able to animate this at home because I had a computer at home and I had a video camera and I did this in Premiere. back in
Oh,
the
cool.
early days. This is, started using Premiere around 1993, I guess. Back in the early days of Premiere.
So that actually leads me to my next question
Okay,
is,
for that in a minute. We'll show more of that. I just want to say one thing really
yeah.
funny. That we were first working on Premiere, we were trying to test it out to see if we make a little QuickTime movie or whatever we were doing. And I can't remember exactly. But I just remember at the time because we didn't know what we were doing. But we were trying this out. And you know how it would say, rendering time about 10 minutes or something like that?
Yeah.
It said rendering time about a year. And we thought, oh no, we broke the computer. We'll have to unplug it. We somehow managed to get it out. It just made us laugh that they actually put in
a year was an option?
They said about a year.
Just
I
hang
guess it was
tight.
About a month.
Just
It
hang
seemed
tight. It's fine.
You gotta have a sense of humor if you're gonna write code.
I feel like somewhere in the back end, people are laughing and they're like, if you've hit this mark, hang tough for a year, you'll have it eventually.
Yeah, eventually it'll be fine.
So you guys started using Premiere. Obviously, you've shown us a lot of hand-drawn sketches and hand-drawn illustrations. What was it like, when, and what was it like to transition from analog animation into the digital realm?
Right. So I first got. I started using Wacom when the Cintiq came out
Yep.
because I didn't really have the ability to be sitting there with a pad going like. I tried it, and it was like, well, this is going to take some practice to get to that. I didn't really have the time to practice. And at that point, when I first was getting more familiar with Wacom tablets, was when I was working at Pixar. And co-directing on Monsters, Inc. didn't allow a lot of time to start learning how to do other things. I mean, we're pretty darn busy. But I thought about it, but before that would happen, I worked on Looney Tunes Back in Action with my dear
That's
friend
right.
with Eric Goldberg. I've known Eric Goldberg since '74. We met at a Kodak Film Festival for young peoples. We were young peoples then. We both entered films. Anyhow, he was directing the animation for Back in Action, and I was doing boards and whatever else I could do to help. But Eric was doing something really interesting. Eric, of course, can draw like nobody in the planet.
He's great.
Like the Da Vinci of animation. He can draw any character. He's total cartoon recall, and he can draw anything very quickly in any pose that is needed. It's like he doesn't even think about it. It's in his brain and it comes out. But he had a Cintiq tablet, and he was working with the editor, who had to shut all the live action film all the plates, and he would give Eric like some key frame grabs, and Eric on the Cintiq would draw it out and it'd be into the Avid, right, like that. And that was the first time I saw the Cintiq. This is in 2003. When I said, "That's for me."
That's
so
it.
I got a Cintiq, and I never looked back. And when we did the movie, I had a Cintiq tablet, and I had sequence directors. I had 4 sequence directors. It was Mike Anderson, Lauren McCullen, Rich Moore, and Steve Moore, no relation. And I said, you guys all should get Cintiqs. It'll just make your work faster. And that's how the whole thing started. And then Richard Sakai saw this, and he said, "Oh my God, this is the future." And so we bought Cintiq tablets for all the boarding crew, just so they can work faster.
Yeah.
Go from digital and get it into the Avid. Because
Right.
we don't have to scan anything. We're just
Right.
drawing images, and we're sending files in. So that's how the whole thing really started. I mean, it was going to happen eventually. Maybe I helped,
Grease those wheels, yeah.
But then after the movie, after we went from 4:3
Yep.
aspect ratio to 239, and then we're going to go, okay, we're going to be 16 by 9 from now on. We're going to have, Then we started going all digital. We started using Toon Boom, and Harmony and so forth. And Cintiqs, everybody's getting Cintiqs. A few people were like, well, I still prefer to draw on paper. I said, okay, we'll let that go to a certain point. And then at a certain point, it's like, you got to get off the paper onto the tablet. And that's what happened. And by the way, I still find I probably draw a little better on paper.
For sure. For sure.
But, and occasionally I'll draw something on paper, scan it, and I'll put it into Cintiq tablet.
Well, and I think what's nice too, and this is another thing that comes up with a lot of artists that we speak with, there's a lot of value and importance of knowing traditional medium and knowing how to draw analog, and we all still draw with pens and papers. I still take notes on paper. It's just, it's still a part. It's valuable, but I think to your point too, especially when you have a team of animators to be able to animate and work digitally and just have that be a lot of a quicker workflow to get to production, especially when you're working on films and however many frames per second.
People know about the good old days of cells, and I understand that. There's technical quality about that, so forth. I remember talking to, one time I was having a conversation with Mark Kirkland, and I said, I feel like we're doing this almost late 19th century invention, because it hasn't changed since the beginning. And in the early 90s, it hadn't. Animation was basically the same as it was in the teens. And it was like, wow, it's like the same technology. And then suddenly, boom, it happened overnight.
Right.
We were the last people who were not digitally doing the ink and paint until like 2002.
Strange.
Everything else, all the other shows were digital paint at that point.
Interesting.
Even when Futurama hit the airs. By that point, I mean, digital paint started, the revolution really started right after Toy Story, really. And the cap system. Well, we did one show beforehand, and they did other shows in between, but we didn't like the final. We did the 138 episode spectacular, was digitally painted by U.S. Animation. We actually animated it all in town because we had it was actually, the show itself was based on my Simpson life. So material and outtakes. And film and show stuff. But we painted all the new material in this clip show of Troy McClure and all that was
so good.
Animated and cleaned up here in town back then in Film Roman. And it was all painted by the U.S. Animation in town as well. And, so that was big. But we didn't go fully onto it until 2000.
Too cool.
Yes, and I directed the first, almost like a proof of concept one. And I say a couple were tried it in between, but it still looked a little too digitally or video gamey.
Right.
Something missing. It was missing the texture of animation. So.
Anyhow,
so it was that Halloween episode 13, I think. It's the one that Homer clones himself, and the zombie Billy the Kid, and the Island Dr. Pepper.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And what's great about that, by the way, I really embrace it. First of all, with the Homer cloning and stuff, I don't know how we could have done it traditionally animated. Because I got levels and levels and levels and levels of Homer and not worry about that. And I was trying a lot of camera work where you're pushing in like this, where the camera is not just zooming down to a flat thing, but we're multiplaning.
Right. Because you could.
And and there was that. There was even some experimentation in the coloring of doing like gradations and things like that. I did that into the backgrounds of Dr. Hibbert because I thought it would give it a better picture look. And I said, oh well, that looks fine, but we won't be doing that all the time. After the movie, that also helped too because we had to up the palette, keep it in the style of the palette, but still expand it for the movie. And Dima Milankovic came in as an art director, and he's been great. So it's really fantastic.
Super cool. So there's a question that popped up in the chat about the couch gag. How did that start? And they're just saying they can't think of any other show that changes the intro every episode.
Right.
Like, what was the beginning?
Right. It was based on Matt's always liked the couch. It was based on the Dick Van Dyke Show. Because the opening of that Dick Van Dyke song, and Dick Van Dyke, that whole opening, da 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 da. And is he going to trip over the Ottoman, or is he going to avoid the Ottoman? Because there was an Ottoman there, and he
Yep.
would trip over it, and they pick him up, or he'd stop and he'd go around it. And so that got Matt thinking. So we did 5 different couch gags for the first season. Remember, the first season was 13 episodes.
Yep.
So we had 5 different couch gags for. And then I think, because again, our budgets were what they were, I think we were doing 24 episodes a season at first. Now we're doing 22. I think we had 12 couch gags a year. And then at a certain point, it was like different couch gags.
Right. Did it? It just.
That's how the whole thing started. It was Matt's inspiration from the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Too good.
So
Too
again,
good.
we have the great Carl Reiner to thank. The great late-hearted Carl Reiner.
Bless him. I feel like he's responsible for just a lot of amazing and wonderful things
Oh, absolutely.
in our world.
Absolutely.
Too good. So, you went to digital, which is great. I mean, there's so many studios right now since everyone is all stuck at shelter at home and on quarantine and things like that.
It has not stopped us when it.
Yeah, you guys haven't stopped.
The last thing we finally got figured out was sheet timing, how to fill out the sheet
Oh.
timing, and now we have that digital as well. I mean, it's probably writing on the sentence and things like
Yeah.
that. But before that was sort of like the last thing. We have this wonderful guy, Peter Gabe, on the show. Peter's very good at technical stuff. And I think he kind of figured out, and it was very recently. It's only like the last couple of months.
Oh, cool.
And now all the sheet timing is done. So we kind of eliminated all paper.
Nice.
That was the last bit of paper that we had to send or have to draw on. And now it's all digital. And that was the other thing too. We used to have like these boxes that were like this big. 3 boxes for Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. It had to be shipped over to Korea, and you had to have a courier with it to be there on the flight to sign for it and fly all the way back from Seoul, Korea. Every time you sent it out, and then they would take, the final elements were shot on film, and so all this packaging, and it's just now send.
Yeah. No more flights to Korea. That's okay.
No flights to Korea.
So, since you've been home, what other fun things have you been working on? Anything?
Occasionally funny bits of animation.
Occasionally funny bits of animation.
Just for me and my pals.
Which is always good. It's always good to entertain your friends.
Yeah.
That's where some of the best jokes, I would imagine, start, right? You need test subjects.
Probably. Let's see. Now, in this, of course, I was animating, believe it or not, Photoshop. Just because I'm sort of used to doing a lot of stuff like that in Photoshop. Let's see if I can find this. There we go. This one. I have a couple of friends and we like to get together and have a few, just a few. So this is like our signal. And share.
There you go.
It's just a short piece of animation.
Just a little. Just a little.
Yeah, and there was something else. Oh, I know. It was a friend of mine who's an extraordinarily gifted bass player, and he showed me this piece that he had to play. He had to play it cold because he's a professional bass player, and it was like 30-second notes. Granted, the tempo was like this, but it's like, and also in 5/4. It's very complicated. And I heard a friend said, "Well, I want to hear that at 120 with David playing along with you." So this is me. This is what this would sound like, or this would look like if I tried to play something. That one would happen. fun with a Cintiq.
So much fun with the Cintiq.
Yes.
Never ending.
No, it's always a good time. See this guy. I can show you other things. Did you guys
Yeah.
want to see? Did they want to see any more of that animation of the chili pepper stuff?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's go do
It's a lot of love for the bat signal, but for beer. It's necessary. I feel like it should just go up daily at 4:45 to remind people that.
Okay, that's a little rum in here. Oh no.
Shh, shh.
I'm not sober. Okay, the last time we saw it was Barney birthday, which is a kind of a fun cycle. It was a little hard to. This is a hard cycle to in between.
I was gonna say there's so much movement in his mouth every time.
Yeah, you sort of go. It was a lot of like, wait, did I? I'm not in between. I'm just going over this. But it worked out. It did work out. It's fun. Steve.
Oh, look how old that is.
Yep. Gold operating system. This is what I call glorpy animation. Is it glorious? Sort of spills from one movement to the other. So this I was always very happy with the way this came out.
That one's great because it's super fluid. It's very
Yeah.
glorpy.
Very glorpy. There's no other word for it.
So how long did that take you to animate? What you
Well,
think?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Please hold 1 year, thank you. Rendering time, 1 year.
It's too bad because I always liked that little joke of his hairs jumping from the top of his head. But you couldn't see in the final animation the way the background is.
Oh.
So you didn't.
Oh,
you
his
kinda
hairs are
missed
good,
that.
yeah.
It's sort of this thing comes over and it jumps over it. Like
Yep.
this. More watery animation.
There's just a lot of amazement happening in the chat. Like, what?
And this was fun too. I enjoyed doing this. And they did a
Oh,
nice
that's a
job.
good one.
Yeah, and then this going down here. They did an amazing job painting because I didn't tell them what to do. I don't know how they figured out how to paint all this stuff here.
Movie magic.
You see the eyes come out like this, and they become this thing. And
Yeah, it's that
sort of
really
like flowing down
cool.
the steps.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then splashes down here. Anyhow,
too good.
fun stuff.
What episode? Off the top? Do you remember what episode that was? I'm trying to think.
Yes, The Mysterious Voyage of Homer.
Yeah.
Or our Homer's Mysterious Voyage. It's in the Spanish, and it's the one where he has eats insane chili
The
peppers.
chilies, yeah.
The chili episode, yes, and meets Space Coyote by the great Johnny Cash. Also, having Johnny Cash. And let's see.
Things for people to watch later. Just go back. Watch all the early episodes.
You want to see an interesting promo about Who Shot Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Let's see.
Well,
It's not the greatest video quality, but I think we can get it.
trivia for people in the chat. Does anybody know who did shoot Mr. Burns? You can't answer, David.
Nope. I was one of the few people who knew. So forgive the video quality, but I rescued it off video recently. Let's see if we can hear it.
Plus an interview with the show's creator.
Oh, you all talk big, but who here is going to stop me?
It's a first for The Simpsons, a cliffhanger. We'll find out for sure who shot Mr. Burns next fall. Until then, we had to resort to begging to try to get the answer.
Well, the person who shot Mr. Burns,
Matt Groening, The Simpsons creator, wouldn't tell us.
I swear it won't be. Oh, it's a dream.
I know who did it.
Hey, maybe executive producer James L. Brooks will talk.
Well, what if I tell you somebody who it isn't? I mean, just to start you, it's not Bleeding Gums Murphy.
Next, we tried to ply the answer from the guy who's in charge of animation. He almost gave in.
Regarding who shot Mr. Burns, I can't tell you that.
Burns cost me my groundskeeping job at the school.
I lost my bar.
And finally, the executive producer David Merkin gave us our one exclusive tidbit.
Homer is arrested at some point.
Homer!
That's all I can tell you. So you should keep that in confidence. And you too.
Mr. Burns was the closest thing I ever had to a friend. But he fired me.
Well, at least we know more than most.
Well, there you go.
Too good. So good. Someone did get it right. It was Maggie.
Maggie. Maggie.
Spoiler alert.
I had to go through Jeffrey Lynch directed the first part one, but David Merkin, the executive producer, wanted it to be so quiet that I think at the time the only people who knew the ending were, well, David, of course, David Merkin, myself, and the writers of the episode, Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein. So.
Were there multiple ends
Yes.
written for that? That's right.
We were worried at a certain point. We didn't know what was going to happen. People like, oh, they'll just figure it out from they'll find out a spy in Seoul, Korea. Or
right.
You never know. So we sent multiple endings in order to confuse the possibilities. And I remember we had an overseas supervisor because we sent it and we didn't send any translations.
Oh.
So it was just a bunch of stuff with no translations, and they were just animating just the way we indicate the mouth charts, which we always do. They always have a mouth chart. But usually they have the translations so they know approximately what the characters are saying.
Right.
But for that ending, we didn't have any translation. And so Uji, who was my supervisor, says, well, David, it's working. Everybody here is very confused. Good.
And they're like, but why don't we?
And we actually, yes, that was not, because we showed some of those when we did the 138th episode of Spectacular. Those were not animated for that show. They were animated for the Mr. Burns show to potentially confuse everyone, throw anybody off the track. We animated Barney shooting, Groundskeeper Willie's shooting,
So good.
Smithers shooting, and yeah, we tried to muddy the water.
I think you did a pretty good job. I don't remember anyone guessing that.
It kind of was a debacle anyhow. I don't know what happened, but it didn't work out so well. The people were in charge of running the contest. They were not the brightest bulbs on
You know,
that show.
it's okay. It's okay.
We do our best.
I know, so much drama. Also, nothing to do with the animations, but the news reporter's mustache was really superb. The gentleman, I mean, his mustache was great. It was
pretty
he
nice.
did get a comment on that mustache, so.
I don't doubt it. We're talking about a big mustache. And I hope, I'm showing more animatics than finished work, but that's fine, right?
The animatics are the cool. I mean, I think it's neat to see so many of us. I think because we've all grown up with The Simpsons, we know what the final products look like. We know what it looks like when it hits the airwaves. So to see those early sketches is pretty exciting.
Well, here's some early stuff.
Oh yeah, what other early?
From the Tracy Ullman show days. Let me see what I can show you. I had a folder, my friends, that I prepared for this little lecture. It's vanished.
Surprise!
As we were talking about before, yes, I'll first bring up this folder. I'll bring up this.
I have it right here, hiding somewhere. It's fine.
I know. I'm gonna find it afterwards.
Happens to all of us.
Well, I'll have a good laugh out of it.
It's okay.
This is from the first episode I directed. It wasn't the first one that aired. It was Bart the Genius, and there's Bart on the train.
Damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Right. Exactly. Oh, this is funny. This is a drawing of George Meyer for a. It was going to be for a New Yorker article.
Oh, cool.
Finished it too. Let's see if I can find. This is a rough color for it, and yeah, this was I think the final color. and they liked it, and they paid me for it, and then they didn't run the article.
No.
Eventually they ran the article several years later, and they didn't use the drawing. So. But now you've seen it.
At least they
Good, right?
paid you for your time.
Exactly. This is interesting. I usually didn't have much time to sketch, but this was from a episode where Bart shoplifts, and so this is just some sketches before doing the layout. Non-fishing sketch. So this was like I think this is like the 11th episode or something like that. Hey, is this the week of this? No. I've written in my calendar that because this is the same. I think I should. Oh, here we go. No, that's not. Millhouse. There we go. There's young Millhouse.
Oh, Millhouse Van Houten.
One of the first. Look, it's drawing M8. It's the 8th drawing of him. It's a Butterfinger commercial. You can sort of see the ghost of Bart there, I guess.
Oh yeah, he's hiding in there.
Yeah. Okay. What's the next question?
Everyone was just so excited of seeing all these rough sketches, the like secret,
in the vault, right?
all the vault. Yeah, you gotta pull out all the vault goods.
Trying to find the vault. Yeah. This is some. Well, let me see. What's this? Aha! Here we go.
Ooh, that sounds
Found the folder.
Ooh.
Hiding away. Aren't you all excited? Okay. So are we on?
Yeah, we're on.
This is actually from the Butterfinger ad. This is a color mock-up. So this wasn't in the ad per se. I just did a real quick drawing, very fast. Not a scene in it, but just to get the color mock-up. By the way, we had no designer. Wes and I were just like, here you go, you're in the deep end. Do we have any designing help? Nope. Do we have any? Nope. Can we? Nope. Okay.
Sure, just
do it.
Just do it.
So by the way, here you can see this is a later drawing. This is from one of the very last Tracy Ullman show. So it's not wildly different from the early days of the season, I would say, right? Certainly better drawing that. This was like a model sheet or just a rough board I did for myself during the Tracy Ullman show. There's an old Bart. Yes, it's quite a bit different.
Yeah.
Now that's like episode 3, I think.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that, by the way, something we don't do. See, we don't close off. Excuse me, the eyes here. We will leave a space for that. And these are some drawings of them dancing. This was called Bart of the Jungle. Yes, this is some early sketches for the opening title sequence. Oh, here we go. This will show you the difference. This was Bart and Lisa in the second episode. This is Bart and Lisa in one of the last episodes. So you can sort of see the evolution.
Yeah.
From about 2 years across. More sketches for.
Here's a great question that just popped up in the chat. How did you guys decide on the yellow?
Oh, that's a very good question. I can tell you right off. Notice Bart. What do you notice about Bart? He doesn't have a hairline.
Right.
Now, so what do? You got to come up with a color that works as a hairline and works as a hair color. Well, yellow works. That's basically it. Georgie Pelusi, who did the color design, we didn't have somebody doing color design.
Yeah.
She just did that. She thought it was a good color that worked as a skin color and as a hair color.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt thought it was great. Matt thought it would be great because people would be flipping channels and they see these yellow characters and go like, what?
Right.
Let's watch this. This might be interesting.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
This is a layout drawing from the Christmas stuff. You can sort of see here's a railroad tracking of in-betweens. This is like the first time Homer choked Bart. It was like this is called family portrait. So this is the last image would be like a freeze frame of a photograph. Let's see what else. That's me drinking. Any other questions? Any other fun questions?
Let's see. Nope, just more comments about how it's nice to see all the behind the scenes. Yeah, it's just that rough. I think understanding your process and because so many of our viewers and people out there are also artists, it's seeing, how many rough sketches do you have on a piece of paper? Just not even doodles, but not refined sketches. It's those intermittent process, those thought sketches, right? When you're just kind of iterating,
Yes,
thinking of faces
it
and.
depends. Yeah, sometimes I had some. I should find them. So it depends. I mean, sometimes it depends on how much time you have. Sometimes it's something that tells you how much time you have to work these things out. Like we did this thing for called Gear Class.
Mm-hmm.
Class of thing that just came out recently, and like I literally had that much time, so I just drew this fast, and I said, okay, this looks good. This is Marge being frazzled. I said, well, that'll work. So there were not a lot of sketches on that. Actually, this was an earlier sketch. I think that I made a even more frazzled version of it. So.
Well, her hair definitely made it frazzled. Actually, where was it? Was there inspiration for Marge's hair?
In the
big
very
blue
first drawing
bouffant.
that Matt did, he had like kind of a high beehive.
Yeah.
We just kept making it higher and higher until at some point it was too high. Actually, the very first model sheet that Wes did, her hair was like another. We sort of measured like 3 circles.
Right.
Like that. It was like 4 circles. It was ridiculously high. It was literally as big as her
So
dress.
good.
So it was so funny, but we just said, Matt's like, well, I don't know if I want to drag you on the ceiling all the time. So we had to.
Maybe a little shorter.
A little too much. It's
No.
just.
It's often one of my favorite things to see when you find street artists that will do a portrait of Marge in a location where there's either like a shrub or something in real life in place of her hair. Brilliant placement. I've seen a few posts out there on Instagram where people just nail the placement, and it's always very exciting. My hair during quarantine is getting a lot longer, so if I pull it on top of my head, I get really good sideshow bob hair. It just, I just go with it.
You're talking about The Simpsons color, and I was just talking about, getting, we're drinking so much, we're getting jaundice, so just before we went on. So I guess in the Simpson land, that's what would happen if you start getting jaundice.
You just start turning into a nice flesh tone.
Flesh color. Oh,
there you
that.
go.
It's terrible.
Well, sir, we're getting on the 3:30 hour, and
yeah,
I
I'm
know
sorry, folks. I gotta jump off.
we
soon.
know you're busy.
How about some other questions? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Sorry we didn't do any Wacom stuff.
It's all right.
I'll tell you what. Here, let's do something.
Yeah, let's do that.
We'll on the same drawing. So you can ask me a question while we do this.
Yeah, let's see. Any other questions out there? People are just saying thank you for spending your afternoon with us.
Certainly. Awesome. We'll just add some. And we'll draw something.
Now, in the magical land of Photoshop, a lot of artists and a lot of people I use them, and I know the guys on my team use them a lot. We get really into like the Kyle Webster brushes. Do you have a favorite brush in Photoshop, or do you just stick with kind of the the classic legacy brushes?
I think I stick with a legacy brush. I really haven't done a lot of investigating on this, but I do kind of like this brush that I'm on now, this classic cartoonist.
Yep.
I just like a good thick and thin line.
Yeah.
I personally need, so I can go like this.
It's a wormhole, those brushes, I'll tell you. So,
yeah,
unless you have time.
But you see what I mean? Like getting the nice sort of thick side and things like that.
Yep.
You know who's always inspiring is if you guys look at Walt Kelly's Pogo work. He's an amazing, thick, thin illustrator. And you can just, if you really take a look at your work, you're like, hadn't noticed how thick the line gets
Mhm.
on one side to the other. And so I'm just doing this really fast.
Ooh, here's a good question. Who has been the hardest, most difficult character to animate?
Oh, anything that's a horse usually, but I mean, not difficult, but Sideshow Bob, because of all the hair, sometimes is difficult. That's like a lot. So if just the normal characters.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. Maybe Fat Tony's a little different. I don't know. Most of my animation has been in the big five. I don't
Yeah.
really do that sequence. I one time. I mean, I like animating Grandpa. He's fun. I have fun animating Professor Frink too. He can be a lot of fun.
Professor Frank is good. There's a few.
I had a great time. A long time ago. It's kind of a gross scene, but Professor Frink is a turkey in a Halloween episode.
Oh.
Dr. Moreau.
Yep.
Dr.
Yep.
Hibbert.
Doctor.
But anyhow.
That other crazy island.
But there, see, we did some Cintiq stuff.
It's perfect. It's great. It's great. Well, sir, I know you have another engagement this evening. I appreciate your time. Everyone, thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate it. I don't know, you feel like playing a little tuba hits on our way out? I did. I told Christopher I'd pull out the slide whistle, so.
I'll play this one. How about that?
So good. We'll play us out. Some good tuba. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining in.